talk is called mentoring. It's for everyone. Woo! It's an exclamation point because we should all be excited about this. And it should be fun. And it should be rewarding. So I'll tell a tiny little bit about me. My name is Jesse Trucks. I'm on the Ops and Board of Directors. Do a variety of training and consulting and things like that. Been doing IT about 13 years. Since the very first job that I ever got in IT, I've been writing training manuals and teaching people technical things, just like most of us. But I've also managed to help sort of advise a lot of people in their careers. And I've been very lucky to have had very good advisors to advise me in my career. Without some of that sage advice, I would still be some angry little dialogue type support moron without any clue. And I'm hoping that I can help everybody understand better how we can be good mentors in our lives every day at work, in our profession. I also currently work for a company called DE Shaw Research, and we design, build, and use supercomputers to do computational biochemistry, which is molecular dynamics simulation. I'm the only person on my site, however, employee, but we just hired a couple of people, so I'm doing a great deal of training again. Sort of yes.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Sorry.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Can you hear in the back?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit of foundation about where we're going to get to about mentoring. And actually, I should specify, we in IT like the term mentoring. It does not exist. It is not an actual valid English word. Not really. It is valid based on the way grammar works, but the technical term for what we call mentoring is actually mentorship. However, I did not really discover this very pertinent fact until after the schedule was published, so I did not change the title of my talk. So learning. Well, what is learning? Learning is to obtain some new skill. It's to attain new knowledge. And in our case, those things go hand in hand, because having new knowledge in our professional careers, both technical or non-technical, is a new skill, which is generally true. But notice this particular definition. This is from the American Oxford English Dictionary. It specifies that it's the acquisition of knowledge and skills by being taught, is what it says in the end. And this is relevant for our particular topic today. But how do you learn? How do people learn in here? Anybody learn by doing things, primarily? Most of that. What about listening to things? Anybody in audio? Okay. And then there's, of course, visual. When you watch somebody do something, do you learn better? Who here learns better doing it than watching it? It's really important to remember that everybody does learn differently, but most people learn in some combination of these three. By hearing something, by seeing something, and by doing something. That's what they call hearing, seeing, and doing are these three in that order. And it's important to remember this about how you learn, but also about how other people learn, so when you are imparting knowledge and you're helping somebody else learn, you can use all three of these. You should always use all three of these. So I'm speaking, there's a visual mnemonic up here, and then hopefully you'll go back to your offices and your homes and you'll do these things and everybody will remember them better, right? But then the other side of learning is training. Well, what is training? Training is teaching somebody else. It's helping them to learn. And in our case, there's lots of ways that we do training. There's many, many more than just these few. But you can explain something. So somebody says, how does that work? How does Apache work? You can explain it to them. Somebody walks into my office and says, how does an Anton supercomputer do X? I get up on the whiteboard and I explain and I show it to them in a diagram of this observation. Here, why don't you watch me do it? I'll show you how these commands work. Right? We've all done that. Coworker or friend. And then there's demonstration. Demonstrating is the act of doing the thing that somebody else is observing. So observation and demonstration always go hand in hand, because if you demonstrate, a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Well, if you demonstrate somebody but nobody's observing, then have you really demonstrated anything, or are you just doing something?
Sorry to interrupt. When you said observation, it sounded like you were describing demonstration. Isn't observation watching somebody do it and then correcting their technique?
Well, what I did just describe is that observation is watching somebody demonstrate.
Right.
And then demonstration is doing something that somebody else is observing. Yes.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the questioning, or the Socratic method, which is to ask somebody a question and have them answer it. Ask them a question that they may not know the answer to, or they don't realize that they can figure out or deduce it, the answer themselves, and you can ask them a question that's leading, or ask them a question that may be a different facet of something, or to get them to think about it in a different way, and then they can answer for themselves. And that allows, one of the things that really helps is it gives somebody better critical thinking skills to kind of evaluate that themselves. And the last one is actually fairly important when you're doing various types of mentoring or being mentored, because if you're trying to work out something more complex, especially if it's something that's not just a technical skill, like how should I manage my new boss after this reorg and I really don't understand how to get along with him or her. That leads to a great deal of questions that you can ask that person to get them to think their way through it, to figure that out, even if you don't know the answer because you've never met that person. By asking them questions, you can help them learn. So these come together when you're a mentor. What is a mentor? Well, experienced and trusted advisor. Advisor is a really important word here, because it's not just about, so being a mentor is not about just teaching people something. How do you do Apache? How do you configure mail systems? How do you design networks? What is VLAN? It's about, how do I negotiate my career? How do I figure out, should I do OSs or networks? I don't know. I'm at a crossroads. A long time ago, I was at that same place. And usually in the second definition here, it talks about an experienced person in a company, organization, etc., who trains and counsels, usually new people or new employees or students. But the important part is somebody with experience in some area that you don't have experience in. They can help mentor you in the way that they have experience. And oftentimes, it's not the technical stuff. The technical stuff, that's pretty easy to do. I believe Tom said it best this morning. If you want to know how to configure Apache, there's a web page for it. You can go figure that out. Although sometimes it really helps on more complicated things to somebody, to work with somebody directly. The other aspect of mentor is, to mentor is to train, to teach, to advise. It's the act of being a mentor or mentoring, which again is really a word. So here's a question. Anybody have an idea, what's the difference between a mentor and a trainer? Because they're not necessarily the same thing. Ideas?
For me, trainer evokes less of a close personal relationship, maybe a shorter relationship, even if it is more personal. Whereas mentor, someone who you actually, it's a personal. It's not, let me teach you this specific skill or assist you in developing a specific skill, and that's the extent of our relationship. And if something goes from beyond there, fine. But mentor, there actually has to be some level of personal interest. And I know you and care about you, or like you to a certain extent as a person, and want to see you succeed.
Okay. I'm liking that so far. Somebody else?
One-on-one versus group.
One-on-one versus group. That's very, very important. Yes.
I would say because you're kind of having a static goal of, if I'm training, and I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going to do, and if you want to be trained and get this information, you can, versus the dynamic kind of goal of, I'm here to help you in what you need help with, and it could be non-technical, whereas trainers can also be, a technical thing.
That's a really good, strong point, and I'll definitely come back to that. Yes, sir.
The distinction that comes to my mind is for the role of providing guidance and training with specificity.
Yes. That's where you go back to the advisor. A mentor is an advisor, and it's not just this. Advice would be, you should consider or investigate light HTTP and D in your particular situation, and here's why. It might work better for your situation than Apache. Training or teaching is just saying, here's how you configure light HTTP. You know, not and that's sort of a non-subtle difference, which I think is really important. Yes, sir.
You can pay for training. I haven't heard of any paying for mentoring.
You may be able to in some profession, but real
It's out
mentoring
there.
you're not going to.
It's out there. I have a friend who's doing it.
Oh, okay.
A coach. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, that's true. Actually, that kind of mentoring, yes, I can see that. Yes.
Well, I think it's only because of the trainers tend to have a more defined specific scope, but the flip side is that a mentor is someone you might go to with a question. Right?
Yes.
It's free form. It's, you know, if I come to you, I might say, you know, I'm doing this and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that. What do you think? That's far more free form than training.
It's true, and this goes back to, is it Sherry? That's right. I want to make sure I pronounce it right. What Sherry was saying is the flip side of what you just said, to use your term, in that training often is, I'm going to teach you how to install an Anton supercomputer node board. All right, 15 minutes, we're done. Goal is met. It's very short term. The difference is that, like you were saying, Sherry, that a mentor relationship is, I'm going to help you with this particular thing now, but that's not the end of this transaction. This is just one in a long series of, you can come to me anytime, and then the door is open. Like, if you're my mentor, I know that I can always come to you and ask you just the boneheaded, dumbest technical or non-technical questions, or something very complicated. And I think that, and Chris, you were talking about a personal relationship, and that personal relationship puts a sort of it's an environment of safety. You feel, as the person being mentored, you feel safe asking a boneheaded question, or a question you think you maybe should know the answer for, or you might feel embarrassed asking, and you feel like it's okay to ask professional questions, and that's a huge difference.
One of the things that comes to mind for me is, I go to the mentor. I don't necessarily expect my mentor to have an answer, but I expect them to have me walk through the process of my finding the answer.
Yes. That is, I think, really critical. Earlier on in my career, probably about half my career ago, I met a guy who was teaching next door, David Parter. And I was great with technical stuff, sort of so-so with the politics at work, and they were very complicated politics. And just hanging out with him and talking to him about professional topics. Interestingly, the very first time I met him was the very first precursor to what is now LOPS in Madison, the Madison, Wisconsin chapter. That meeting was reviewing the Code of Ethics in pre-edited or pre-complete form, and I ended up jumping on board to be one of the people that helped edit what is now the Code of Ethics that we follow and jointly with Usenix. And so my relationship with David Parter opened with discussing the core foundation of the non-technical aspects of our jobs, our profession. And as a result, I've gone to him over the years to ask for various advice, and it completely changed the way I do things. And I was hoping he would not be teaching at the same time I was, so he could be in here and be embarrassed, but that's not going to happen. But it's also an informal relationship. We're just friends. We never said, I will be your mentor, will you be my mentor? And he's come to me with advice. So what happens eventually, depending on what level of experience the two people are, two people of similar level of experience, but different experience, they can mentor one another and on more of an equal footing. And not everybody realizes that that's still a mentorship type of relationship when you're discussing things on a professional level. So this is what I look at. There is no mentor versus trainer, because a mentor is a trainer. They will teach you technical things, they will teach you professional skills, but they're a trainer that does extra. And it's that personal relationship, it's that advice, it's the, I have an open door. There's a lot of people, how many people have here have had a coworker or a manager that says, I have an open door policy, but they actually didn't? Yeah, the door might be open, you can come in and ask a question, but you definitely will get punished for it. Whereas then there's other people, and hopefully we've all met these folks, or we are these folks, where yeah, the door is open. My door is virtually open because it's almost always closed, because my music is very loud and rude if I don't keep it closed. But anybody can always come knock on the door, come in, ask any question they want. That's always been my policy forever. And I think it's really important that we realize that it's all about being accessible as well. And so you think about when we go back to the terms, okay, a trainer is usually somebody who's technical. You talked about it's a short term, it's sort of like transactional. You've talked, several people here have talked about how it's really about this specific thing. It's usually fairly short term. I'm taking a 5-day class from a trainer. I spend years having ad hoc discussions with somebody that I consider a mentor. And it's very, very different that way. So you get professional advice and technical training from somebody who is being, you have some sort of mentorship relationship with. So if you're looking for a mentor, how do you find one? These are some of the things that I would look at. It's somebody you respect. If you don't respect the person, if you don't admire their work, then you're not going to listen to them. You don't really want to ask them questions. So clearly that person is not the right person. If it's somebody who you like their work, you respect who they are, you like their ethics, you like their morals, you like the, even if they have completely diametrically opposed political beliefs, are they ethical and good at being a professional? And if so, and you like them and you get along with that person, that's a great professional mentorship relationship. Because you don't have to talk about guns, you don't have to talk about politics, you don't have to talk about war or peace or any of these sort of hot button personal kinds of issues where people may have different opinions on. But you can talk about all kinds of things in our profession, and ethical and moral dilemmas will come up in our profession, and you can get advice, even if you don't necessarily, would not necessarily go and say invite them over to hang out with your kids, and, just please ask them to keep your gun in the car, or depending on your beliefs or preferences, you might ask them to bring a gun with, But also, I think it's important for our profession, there's somebody that works with some sort of similar technology that you work with. I, in most of my career, have not managed a great deal of Windows systems, but I have managed Windows systems. And there are times in my career where I've needed a lot of advice that involved somebody who understood cross-platform issues on that level. And I don't mean cross-platform like a majority of the Unix folks think cross-platform is Solaris and Linux. They're technically cross-platform, but that's not necessarily it. So there's a different perspective there that I needed. And so I would find somebody that, say, knows Windows some, or at least used to work on Novell, so they understand having two alien creatures trying to talk to each other. And so I think it's really important. And also, even taking it to a more subtle level, if you are a storage administrator, that's primarily what your job is, having somebody who has never managed storage beyond the real basic level and had only worked with networking, and you don't know networking, that is not necessarily going to be a great mentorship relationship if you discuss a lot of technical issues. However, if you're looking for this relationship for just professional advice, it might still work. Usually there's some sort of a crossover between technical issues that become non-technical issues, what do they call it, is it layer 8 or layer 9, whatever the politics are, right? And so usually it helps. So your guidelines, again, this is just my advice, chuck it at the door when you leave. And also, a compatible personality is very, very important. If you're very, very shy, if you're a very quiet person, and you're probably not going to feel comfortable with somebody who talks like this every single day, no matter what situation they're in, and they wave and scream and yell their arm, wave their arms around. That might not work because you might feel uncomfortable, or just because your personalities don't necessarily match. They might be a great person to learn how to configure Apache, but they may not be a great person to go get professional advice from because you will unconsciously feel nervous, and vice versa. I tend to be kind of loud. I talk a lot. My mom said I started talking early, and I haven't shut up since. And like but so if I'm helping somebody who's extremely shy, I have to try to really, really tone it down, because they might feel, if somebody who's very much an introvert, I can help them with their technical stuff, but I might be the wrong person if they touch on a passionate topic. I start waving my arms around and stuff like that. And so it's really important also to get a good rapport with that person. And a big part of that is you do respect them. In a sense, these are building blocks, but from top down, so bottom up. You respect them or admire their work in some fashion. They understand the work that you do, which is really important. It's actually more important that they understand the work you do. If the person who you are going to look to as a mentor, they need to understand your work more than you need to understand theirs, because unless it's going to be sort of an equal mentorship, partnership like that. And then also, if you get along really well, then you can build this rapport. But all of those things may happen, but you still may not gel. You may get along great, may even have wonderful discussions about things, but it may not feel like that personal relationship that you're talking about. Because a mentor really often becomes a friend after years. Obviously, something like a life coach, that might be a slightly different situation, but if you're looking for an informal relationship, mentorship type of thing, that would be different. So, what if you want to be a mentor? And all of us have or will, at some point, be both. Somebody who has a mentor and who is a mentor to somebody else. And actually, how many people in this room have learned at least one thing from a coworker? How many people have taught at least one thing to a coworker? How many people have actually had a mentor for the profession? A lot less. How many have been a mentor to somebody else? Interestingly, some folks who feel like they have not had their own mentor have been a mentor to someone else. And that is actually a very hard bridge to gap, because if that hasn't been modeled for you, it's not necessarily always sort of an innate thing to do. I was glad to see half the room has mentored people, because I find I know my job and my profession much, much, much better because I have helped other people try to understand their career and their job and their profession. I think the reason that I've always liked teaching things, and I've done all kinds of internal training before I started doing training for LOPSA and things like this, is because when I teach somebody something else, not only do I have to go make sure I really know my stuff, but it cements it in your head. And part of it is because it goes back to learning style, right, and learning methods. Everybody learns a little bit from hearing, a little bit from seeing, a little bit from doing, some of us more from one or the other. So by explaining it and verbalizing it, I'm now teaching it to myself, and I remember it and I think about it better. So being a mentor to someone else will actually help your own career and your own profession. Yeah.
A lot of med schools, particularly in residency, the standard is learn it once, do it once, teach it once.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's a great model. And we should use that. So, what do you have to do to be a mentor? Obviously, teach technical skills, because that gets back to the training part of it, right? You're going to teach some level of technical skill. It may not actually be, if you don't work with the person directly, if it's, say, through an organization like this, or just somebody else you happen to meet through the IT community, You may not learn things like, this is how you run XYZ command, or this is how you set up GPG. But it might be technical things like, these are the reasons you use MySQL. These are the reasons you use Oracle. Now you can choose. Now the overlap between the two is great. You need a relational database. They both match. You need one that's lightweight. One matches. You need one that, it used to be if you needed one to do transactions, we're stuck with Oracle or Informix. Odd we don't, we're not stuck there anymore. Things like that. So it's technical skills, but not necessarily always the nuts and bolts. The nuts and bolts are in man pages. They're easy to teach really quickly. It's easy to find on websites. But doing things like, here you go. How do I set up a secure site, a secure certificate for a web server? It's not straightforward. It never has been. Maybe someday it will be. It's a technical skill. However, it's more of a process than anything else. And so you can teach somebody what the process is, so you're teaching a technical skill. Every web server does it different. Most people just use Apache these days. So a great deal of it is all the same. However, it used to be, what was the one that Sun used to have? They bought. Yes, it was Netscape.
They still do. Yeah, iPlanet, Sun1.
Yeah, iPlanet, that's a good point. But yeah, but back in, so they have a completely different infrastructure on how to do that. But under the hood, it does the same thing, so you can still teach the technical skills, things like that. But also, another thing about being a mentor is you're providing not just those technical things like that, but advanced design and advanced technical information. Like, why would you choose Apache or iPlanet or whatever they're calling these days, or like HTTPD? Why would you choose, do you do something in Python over Perl? Yes, that's a religious debate, but there are actual technical reasons, or sometimes there's organizational reasons. Pardon? Business reasons. My organization, D-Shaw Research, my company that I work for, I can program anything I want in any language I want. They don't care. However, every tool that they make and provide to us from the software development people to manage my supercomputers are compiled C code or Python. I can write all the Perl code I want and I can use it. They don't care. One other person also programs in Perl. Everybody else does Python. I'm going to have to learn Python. Because if I want to change that tool rather than replace it, Python. If you're making a decision, which do you go with and why? That's the kind of thing you might go to a mentor for, or an organization. But also, modeling and teaching professional skills is actually incredibly important because this gets into the advisor part of things. And it's really difficult to learn professional skills reading a book or reading a web page. You can get a good foundation, you can understand some of the things that are involved, you can get good ideas and concepts, but really finding out how it applies to your job, your life, your personality, that really comes from talking to somebody who already has done it or is further along in their career. Or just made a bunch of mistakes that they can tell you, well, yeah, no, don't do it this way, here's the or give you that advice. So, when you're mentoring somebody else, you want to be able to talk about and be comfortable talking about what your personal experiences have been. I've made horrible mistakes in basically PR, personal PR issues at jobs. You go into a job, like here's a great one. I used to think that if you get hired in a new job, sometimes it's a new position that's open, and the manager that you interview with is like, I'm looking to make some changes around here. I'm really glad you've got a skill set that nobody else here has. We're going to start doing change management a little more severely, and because we don't really do it enough right now, I think that's great. So you come in, or in this case, I came in, said, all right. So I started pushing people around, like, let's get some stuff changed. It took me 8 months to overcome the bad press that I got from that first day. 8 months before most of the department actually liked me at all. So you got to be careful in going to a new job, for instance, and observe. So I've now learned, and I can tell other people, when you go to a new job or a new contract, observe. Don't just come in and tell them how to do things different. You don't know the history, and you don't know whose turf somebody might be defending. You know, things like that. That would be a mentor's advice. And I would go into much greater detail if I were talking one with somebody about that, for instance. And the other thing is, if you're mentoring somebody, you really absolutely have to be interested and personally invested in the success of that person's career and their professional life. If you're not going to give them kind of hard, tough love advice that they may need. And they're not going to feel that you are giving them good advice that they should consider. And just because they don't follow the advice doesn't mean they don't respect it and they didn't pay attention. However, if you really want somebody to follow your advice, or at least very seriously consider it, make sure that they really do understand that you really are trying to have them be successful and make them better at doing what they are. And especially if we're mentoring somebody that's a coworker, sometimes people can think, well, you know, that might get that person a leg up. And it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking, well, if I help them too much, then they're going to get advancement and they're going to get recognition and I won't. However, if you build a good relationship with that person, then, and when they do something good, you tell other people, oh, no, Jeff did that. Yeah, he did a great job with that. You know, or Sally's the one who came up with this great idea, and that's why I implemented XYZ in this particular way. I'm really glad she helped. Give people credit. And if you do that, then the person you're mentoring will also help you. But when you deserve the recognition for doing something or helping them, they'll give it. And you all win. Everybody wins by helping each other that way. So, we talked about the definition of what being a mentor is, what mentorship is, what that relationship is. Well, how do you do it? Where do you find mentors? Who's going to be a mentor? Well, as is the theme of this conference, all mentors for your profession are in your professional community. And in this case, I hope that you find that at LAPSA and at conferences like this one. And online, you can get in contact with people. And remember, you don't necessarily have to be in the same city. You don't necessarily have to go to lunch to discuss something, though sometimes it's easier. I still talk to people on a very regular basis, and in fact, I've built relationships with people where I primarily talk to them on IRC. Like, I don't think Adam and I have ever spoken on the phone except for to arrange lunch at Lisa. Once. Yes, once. You know, but we talk on IRC a lot, and we talk about these kinds of topics a lot. As an example, you don't always have to use a more traditional medium. However, that can help. And if you work with somebody, it's a good idea to just go to lunch sometimes, to go out for a drink afterwards, or go for a cup of coffee, so that you can get away from the office, and then you don't worry about somebody overhearing, unless you actually are one of the lucky few that has the office at the door you can close and nobody else actually will walk in on you. And LAPSA is working on a mentorship program. It's very, very slow. It's been building grassroots. It's getting a lot of momentum this week. Obviously in the last couple of days, and I'm really hoping that we can have a takeoff. There's just a stub of a page on this URL right now, and the hope is that people will go there and they will see the email address that to say, I want to be a mentor, or I want to help develop a mentorship framework with LAPSA, because what we're trying to do is get people to help us build a way to put people together. Now, we're not talking about, let's put in a dating service module and use it. You know, like, he works at the Apache mail systems and he does HPC10. I wonder if we'll get along. You know, exactly. But what I do want to do is, for people especially, one of the problems is, for those of us who had the luxury and pleasure of working with, working with a large number of people, or in a larger organization, we have ready mentors, at least potential mentors, available in coworkers, because you have a team. However, some of us work alone or in very small groups, or there's nobody there that you just feel like gels, because remember, there's all those different, you have to have a good personal relationship and the potential for that. So you may have to step out of that to find somebody who you may not have met before. An interactive discussion and interaction that's real time rather than just emails back and forth, sort of, or mailing list, is a really good way to get an understanding of how somebody is, what kind of things they like, how their teaching style is. Get out there. If you don't have somebody that you think would work out as a good mentor, then go and find it through IOC, through phone calls, through going out to your local LOPSA meetings, or like BB Lisa in the Boston area, or other organizations like that, and local lugs like up where I'm in near Endicott, New York. We have what we call a Stony Lug, which is STNY, Southern Tier of New York Linux Users Group. It's completely informal. They meet twice a month, and people show up every time. It's shocking. It's amazing.
There's nothing to do up there.
So,
Same.
it's a sharp hook in the stick. But then, one of the other things is, if you're looking to be a mentor for somebody, sometimes, if you actually use the word mentor or mentorship, it scares people away because they think that's some sort of binding, formal something that they're not sure about yet. And it goes the other way too. Like, I've had lots and lots of mentors, and I have yet to ever actually tell somebody directly to their face, I feel like you are my mentor. Because they would be like, no, I am not. And it's just, there's never been a formal declaration like that, but I've had these relationships. And I think one of the problems that we have in our IT profession is that we don't acknowledge these relationships enough. And I'm totally guilty of this. This goes back to teaching other people how not to make their own mistakes. So I think what to be important is, if you do find somebody that you want to mentor you in whatever aspect of your career that you're looking to be mentored in, or all of it as a sort of a conglomerate, just tell them that, like, I really feel like you help me out a lot, and I really feel like you're a good mentor to me. And if they don't totally freak out and stop helping you, then you can actually use that term and it should be labeled as a mentor relationship. Doesn't mean you can't be friends and go to movies. Most of the time, mentors, good personal mentors that last years, end up being really good friends, or they become, their mentor relationship is born out of a friendship. But we should call it that. We should look for mentorship in our daily work. How many people have started at your company, even if you're fairly new yourself? Let's say you've only been doing this for 3 years. Like, if you're more advanced in your career, then think back. When somebody else new comes in, an intern comes in, for instance, he or she, it's their first day on the job, they've been working in the school lab for a while, things like that, but they don't really understand the profession. You can still help them learn things and teach them things and be a mentor to them. And I think if you think back, all of us have probably done that on some level. Not necessarily across years, it might be just for several months, but it's that personal relationship that gets formed, even if it's just at work, and it goes beyond this short transaction. It's more like there was an intern at the last job I had, came in, just balls of fire all the time, gung-ho, loves his job, did a great work, always wanted more work, but he also knew almost nothing. So he had to come and ask questions, and he'd go back and he'd figure something out. He'd hit a brick wall, come back and ask questions. And it was about 3 times a day for several months he would be in my queue. Hey Jess, you got a second? And not all the time was it about the technical work. In fact, every now and then he's like, hey, you want to get a cup of coffee? That meant he wanted to talk about something that's non-technical, and he wants to walk out of the office. And we would just go walk around to the other side of the building, get a cup of coffee, or we'd go next door to the coffee shop. And he actually, I hope my advice worked enough that helped him, and I think it did, because he applied for and got a full-time job on the team. Still works there. And I don't work there anymore. I don't have time to talk to him that often, but we only worked together for about 7 or 8 months. And by doing that very small amount of work, I hope that I've helped him launch a good foundation for a positive and ethical career. And I know that we've all done that, and we can do that. We should go and seek those things out, those relationships out in our work that we're doing now. Any other last questions before we get to that? Comments? I've stunned you with boredom.
No.
Well, thank you very much for coming. If anybody wants a copy of this, drop me an email, jtrucks@lopsa.org, please. And we're all OPSA members now, so come to the IRC channel. There's a lot of great technical and professional advice to be had right there on that channel. And you may find you meet somebody who is more of your, in the kind of situation you're in. And there's a lot of people that are standalone sysadmins. You know, and those are the folks that have the harder time finding a mentor or finding ways to mentor somebody else. And Matt's a great expert on that. Well, thank you.